Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Inside Story podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of building diverse businesses and becoming a successful entrepreneur. I'm your host, Dursun Halimova, a business coach and facilitator on a mission to help build impactful businesses. Today, my guest is Francine Keiser, who is a renowned designer, founder, and the creative face behind Francine K, which is an exquisite luxury ready-to-wear label designed here in Luxembourg and produced in Europe. Francine, it's great to have you on the Inside Story podcast. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Hello, Dursun, and hello, everybody. I'm very excited to go through this talk with you.
Great. To start off, I will read several unfinished sentences and I would ask you to finish them for us, please.
Wow, that may be a challenge.
It's not. All right. Being an entrepreneur means?
It means following your convictions 200%.
Building an impactful business requires?
A lot of courage and a lot of work.
Failure is?
There cannot be failure, really, because you learn from your own faults and mistakes.
Success is a result of?
Success is a result of pushing your ideas through.
Interesting. Okay. And the last one, being fulfilled in life means?
Just do it as long as you're happy to do it, as long as it gives you pleasure.
Couldn't agree more. Sometimes we are so focused on the end goal, I think we often disregard the process, because as long as the process is enjoyable, you're learning, you're growing, despite the difficulties and challenges, regardless what kind of end goal you reach, I think it is worthwhile journey to embark on.
I fully agree. There's a German proverb, don't know whether it exists in English and how to translate it, but it says it's the path that is the most important thing and not the goal.
Yes, I think in English there is something similar. It's the process, not the outcome, or something similar. Okay, Francine, I'm super excited because our listeners, once they learn about your background and where you are today in the matter of few years, I think they will be as impressed as I am. So help us to understand who you are, what you do. If you could tell us briefly about you as a designer and your fashion design. What do you do as a designer, and why did you start? Why did you go into fashion design?
Right. It's a very long story, and I try to keep it as short as possible. As you just mentioned, I have a career already behind me, which is the career as a lawyer in an international law firm. And somehow, quite at the beginning of that career, I made a promise to myself, which was the promise to give me at one stage in my life, maybe around the middle of my life, the possibility to do other things. Because as everybody knows, the life of a lawyer is not giving you a lot of time for other things in life. I always had many other interests, and that went from sports to cooking, through literature, to architecture, philosophy, well, just too many things. And I just didn't have time to devote myself to any of these interests. There was at the time definitely no possibility for a lawyer to work part-time. So that was really, my feeling was, I cannot die one day at the age of 80 and not having had the opportunity to pursue anything else. And therefore I made a promise to myself that at some stage, not too late, I would leave my lawyer's career and start a new career. I have to say, I was sure I wanted to study something new, start something completely different, but I never fixed myself on what it would be. So I cannot say that I left the lawyer's career to become a fashion designer, and we will probably talk more about it later, how it happened. And it was very important for me to keep that flexibility and to give me the possibility to look out for whatever the opportunities would be around me after I took that decision to leave the job as a lawyer. So maybe just because people are always interested on how I then got to fashion design. It was really a kind of coincidence because I had lots of beautiful clothes from my lawyer's time, and I wanted to upcycle them, to change them, but then I realized I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have a sewing machine. And my husband one day came and had bought me a sewing machine. And so I started sewing. I absolutely loved it. And then I started registering at a school in Paris for fashion and sewing. And that was just at the beginning of the pandemic. So I had a year that I spent in front of my sewing machine and in front of my computer doing the online courses. And I have to somehow, the pandemic was an opportunity for me to sit still and really develop this skill that I didn't have. And then at the end of the year of these studies, there is a fashion show organized by the school to which I participated. I was very happy to be selected to participate. And I was extremely surprised that actually it's a competition and that I won this competition. And that was really the milestone that was laid for me to take the decision to create my brand.
So, Francine, as you mentioned, you did have a career before. You worked as a lawyer for 30 years, and somehow, almost like from one day to another, you decided to switch, right? And it wasn't something you knew. You had to educate yourself. You had to learn how to design, how to sew, and your initial progress or maybe success with winning the competition, I guess, gave you also a reason to pursue this as a professional career path. So can you tell us a little bit about when you made this transition? Were you scared to leave, I'm assuming, a comfortable job behind? Looking back, I think you started in 2022. Did you predict you would be where you are now, both as a person, but as well as a designer and owner of a business?
Well, of course, I was scared because it is impossible to predict, as you know. I was scared. It's a very difficult decision. First of all, I adored my job as a lawyer, and I had a wonderful career. So deciding to leave it is a very hard decision, especially as I have to say, I did not necessarily get a lot of comfort from my surroundings, my family, my friends. Couldn't really understand my decision. My partners at the law firm didn't take me seriously at the beginning and couldn't believe I would do that. So it was a difficult decision because there's much to lose. You don't know what you will get instead, and not a lot of support around. Nevertheless, I was very convinced that there were other things in life I wanted to do, so that made me going, and I'm very happy now, obviously, that I was doing it. But no, I couldn't know where I would be today. And to be frank, I think that's okay. I don't think, and I think actually that's the problem why many people do not leave their careers, their current careers, is because they want to plan everything. They want zero risk. They want to know exactly into which new situation they are stepping, and you cannot know it. And I think it's fine that you do not know. I have to say, yes, I didn't know, and it just came step by step. It was never really everything that happened, and how my new career developed was not planned. It was more like, I would say, sometimes coincidences, even though I don't think it's really coincidences, but just opportunities that came up and that I took. And I think that that's really how it should be. And you should not plan, and you cannot plan, and you should not plan everything in advance.
It is, I think, very human to try to control. We want to predict, we want to know what's going to happen. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people oftentimes are stuck in very unpleasant situations, right? Be it a work situation or even personal relationship or otherwise, because it's familiar. We know it might not be a good and ideal situation, but because we know it, we know what to expect, right? Somehow we feel comfortable in that versus taking the leap of faith and taking the risk and trying something new. I am quite surprised. You started your fashion company in 2022, knowing almost zero about fashion, right? As you said, you had to self-educate and take courses. But at the same time, since you've launched your fashion line, you have presented your work at fashion weeks in Paris, New York, and London, and started sales recently in Paris since March 2024. You have a shop there. You have a shop here in Luxembourg. That's very impressive for just for 2 years being in business. How did you become a well-known fashion designer in just 2 years? What were the decisions, opportunities, or even people that you think were instrumental in your success?
Yes, I think it's always very difficult to say why did things evolve as they evolved. I think the first thing is you really have to dare, and you must be, well, it's also a question of character. You must be entrepreneur. You must be willing to take a certain level of risk. I would not advise people to take a lot of risk. I think you always must have a plan B if things do not work out as they should. But you must be able to take the risk and just jump. I mean, otherwise you just do not progress. And that's what I did. I have to say, I did it at school for making my application to participate in the competition, where I was definitely probably the least qualified. I had no experience at all, whereas others had already so many qualifications as stylists, as tailors, and so on. I came brand new, and I had the courage. I said, I have nothing to lose. I just want to participate. The same then when I launched my brand. I made 8 months after the launch, I made an application to New York, to the New York Fashion Week, to participate in a show at the Fashion Week for independent designers. And I was accepted. It was not very easy because I had no other shows before, and they obviously want people who have some track record, but I made it. And again, if I had not simply dared and tried, it would never have happened. Since I was at the New York Fashion Week, I had so many other doors that were opening, so many opportunities, other fashion weeks that invited me. I was selling at a store in New York, now in Paris. All that comes, I mean, one step leads the other. Also, the store I have in Luxembourg was not something I was looking for, but it was just people had someone who knew me had suggested it because he thought I might be interested. And then at the beginning I said, no, budget-wise, it makes no sense. At the beginning, I'm only starting. And then we found a way to do it nevertheless. So I really think you have to believe in yourself and then dare, and then things will happen. But you must have, nevertheless, a clear strategy. You must have a niche. You must have a team around you. I mean, there are lots of other things that are required. I mean, it should not just be an idea. I want to do this or that's a flash that goes through your head and then do it. Yes, you need that flash, but you need the substance around to organize.
Talking about having a team and processes, from what I know, you are a solopreneur in charge of all aspects of your business, starting from creation, production, distribution to marketing. How do you manage all of that without feeling overwhelmed?
It is a lot to manage. As you say, I'm a solo entrepreneur. I'm not employing people. So I'm in charge of everything. And the days only have 24 hours, and it is sometimes very difficult to cope with. My legal background helps me a lot, though, because quite a large portion of the work is administrative, legal, regulatory, management stuff, which I frankly believe, if you don't have a legal or economic background, are very difficult to manage. If you are just an artist, these are not necessarily the qualities the competencies you have. So that helps me a lot that I have a legal background, makes things much easier. Nevertheless, it is a burden, all the administrative tax and management issues that come up on a daily basis. In my view, they take away too much of my time, which could be very useful creative time, because that's what really I want to do. I do outsource a bit. I outsource the heavy part of like accounting, tax. I did outsource the first year. I outsourced the marketing because it was very important to have a specialist to do like a roadmap and set out all the actions that were necessary. So yes, it is very important, nevertheless, to have the good people around you, also people supporting you, motivating you. I'm also thinking of my teacher in Paris, who was very important in the launch of my brand, because he was always believing in me. He was always supporting me and giving me a lot of advice, and that's very, very necessary.
Indeed. I think oftentimes when we think of a solopreneur, we think it's only one person doing everything. And yes, indeed, this one person oftentimes does most of the job. But then, as you say, there's always an opportunity to collaborate, ask for feedback, or even outsource some of the activities. So kind of going further on this thought, how do you survive and thrive in a competitive and financially struggling industry like fashion? It is, in my opinion, I might be wrong, it's very difficult to get in. There are very well-known big brands, and it's very hard to start something really unique or to stand out somehow, right? Get the traction that you need. So how do you thrive in a competitive market like fashion industry?
That remains, of course, a huge, huge challenge. It is not easy. It's not easy for anyone in the fashion industry these days, whether they are small or big, or big names. Or I think everybody is suffering a little bit. I think my first reflection is not to do what others are doing. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense just to replicate what is already existing, because you cannot do it as quickly and at low cost that others, the bigger, long established brands are doing. So that doesn't work in my view. So you have to find your niche. You have to do something different that doesn't exist. You can say that's probably quite difficult because there exists so much. But when you are an artist, when you are a creator, you always you have your own ideas, and they do not necessarily exist. In my case, for instance, the fashion I design, and I think it may be good just also to give people an idea of what it is, what I do, because there are so many different styles out there. My fashion is classic, elegant, and at the same time always with a touch of originality, lots of colors, quality fabrics. The garments really fuse a number of qualities which you do not always see together normally in fashion. It's classic and original, it's elegant and comfortable, it's joyful and sober and sensual. So it's combining different feelings, combining materials, and always the right dose of originality. And I have to say, my customers say that they do not find my style anywhere else. So for me, that's a huge compliment, actually, because that's what it is about, to create something that you think does not necessarily exist and which is new. And then to make it work, I think also very important is that you have to decide and know the type of customers that you target, and you have yes, to just make sure that what you create, what you produce, corresponds to what your customers are looking. Because if you, for instance, create a brand for teenagers and it costs €1,000 a piece, it just doesn't match. So you have to be realistic and match the, let's say, the offer and the demand.
Who is your customer?
My customers are well, could be women of any age. I think it is, and that's something my teacher told me one day, and which I found very useful as a comment, that my style fits women from 15 to 85, which is nice. But again, I do know that there is a price range, a middle price range. It's not extremely expensive, but it is not low cost. So my typical customers are women, professional women who have professional meetings, who like to be dressed up, who like to be elegant. So women in their careers, but also women after their careers, who still, because nowadays, and I think it is so important to say that because it is not everybody's thoughts, but nowadays, even if you have a certain age, it's not too late to be elegant, to be beautiful, and to dress up.
Indeed. And having looked at some of your work, one thing that really stood out, or a couple things that stood out, as you said, it's very classical. So I think it's really great for women to want to dress up in a professional setting, but at the same time, they look super comfortable, and the colors add a lot of vibrancy. And especially, in a country with very gray weather like Luxembourg, I love seeing people wear, different colors that are very vibrant. And you touched upon also the importance of knowing your customers, finding your niche, and standing out, doing something original. Tell us, where do you get your inspiration? Where do you get this creativity? How do you come up with new designs?
Well, luckily, I don't have the problem of having enough inspiration. Very often, I wake up in the morning and I have the head full of ideas of things I'm like seeing flashes, and I get up and I draw it immediately. So I'm not lacking inspiration. But I think when you create a collection, you cannot just do whatever comes through your head. It has to be aligned somehow. It has to be consistent. There must be a message. I'm clearly very much inspired by the 60s, like structured short dresses, very colorful, inspired by designers like André Courrèges or Paco Rabanne, Pierre Cardin. These are designers that I love since ever, because when I was a little girl, I saw these in the magazines that my mother was buying. I saw these haute couture shows and photos, and it's something I think it has unconsciously always marked me, and it was really something that I found like the ultimate beauty of fashion. So that's with my style. I'm clearly inspired by that. And then I don't know. It's very strange, because when I have ideas, it's really the things I always would have loved to wear during my whole life when I was working professionally in meetings in offices. So clothes that are comfortable for the whole day, that are classic and serious, professional, but nevertheless have this little touch of looking fashionable, looking colorful, joyful. And sometimes I'm very surprised and I wonder, but why nobody has done the same thing before? It's very strange. I think as it is exactly what I always would have loved to have. Why nobody else has created it? But somehow there seems always to be that niche that when I come, nobody has yet done it. Very often I see afterwards people doing very similar things.
I think that's the good thing about, not seeing the products or services that you want, right? So that leaves the space for people like you and I and our listeners to start a business, right? To find the gap in the market and try to fill it. So amazing. Now, we have spoken briefly about your career as a designer and how it has been amazing over the 2 years. You have managed to achieve several levels of success, if you will, right? Going to international fashion shows and having your design shown and also sold in major cities. Let's now look at the flip side. What would you say was the hardest challenge you had to overcome since you embarked on this entrepreneurial journey? And how did you deal with that challenge?
I would say, well, the first big challenge is at the beginning, when you jump into the water and you are quite alone. You feel all alone, actually, even though you may outsource or have some help. You feel alone. And it's really this, that it is a world that you don't know. You don't know anyone. You don't know the processes. You don't know where to start. So I must say the beginning was really, really difficult. And I didn't know where to start. And then when I started, I didn't know whether my actions were the right ones. Must say after 12 months, you get a little bit to know how it works, and then you feel much more comfortable in it. But I think the second big challenge then is, once you are evaluating in this situation, there comes the moment where you have to decide whether you want to expand, how much you want to expand, how you want to expand. And that was for me very difficult because, yes, of course I want to expand. Of course I want to get well known. I want to have a lot of success. I want to be internationally visible, which is all very nice, but at which price? Because you have then to make compromises. If you want to become big, you have to produce more, you have to produce more often, you need collections that are much bigger, you have to renew very often your collections. And yes, you have to deal with agents who have requirements, who impose contracts on you. And all of a sudden I realized, okay, if I do that, so that's that. I'm not doing the same work anymore. I sit behind my computer, managing contracts, trying to get my number of looks ready for a certain date. And I mean, it becomes just a production management job. And I wanted to be the artist who in the morning draws my sketches and then start doing my prototypes, trying out, looking for the right fabrics. And so it is a clash. And that's really something I must say I find very difficult to decide. Do I want to be the artist in my studio, relaxed, just creating, also not too much listening to what customers want, what any agents or shops want? No, I just want to create what comes across my head and what I like. Or if I want to be bigger and I want to make it more profitable, I have to make a lot of concessions. And I have to say, frankly, personally, I'm not ready to do these concessions. But I like to expand internationally. There are ways, it is of course slower, but there are ways to move, to stay independent and just produce what you want as much as you want, and find the right partners also internationally to help you develop your brand.
Does it come then at a cost? Like, how do you, because as you mentioned, right? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs who might not be in exactly in your situation, but in a similar situation where they want to go after big markets, big clients, right? To grow and expand as fast as they can so they can grow as a business, also grow their revenue base. And then, as you say, it comes at a cost of maybe not doing exactly what you want, right? Kind of not enjoying your job as an artist. How do you then still make it work? Because I'm assuming there's a risk of financials, right? How do you pay or how do you run yourself as a business if you're not going after these big projects, which could expand your market, expand your customer base?
The problem is if you go after the big projects, you also have to invest more again. So it is like a
chicken and egg.
Chicken and egg. So you always have to be, and that's whatever the level you are playing in, whatever the league you are playing in, you always have first to invest, and you don't know what will be the results, what will be the benefits. But but that's just financially. If you invest only little, you cannot be more profitable than what you have invested somehow. So it's always linked. If you want to make a lot of money, it's a risk, of course, but you have to invest a lot. I think you have, probably everybody has on his own to decide what is the most important goal and how do you measure success. For me, frankly, success is not only a financial measurement. Yes, if you want to measure success as earning as much money as possible, you have to go, I think you become less and less artists and you have to go for big contracts, produce a lot, and then you can earn a lot of money. There's no guarantee, of course, but that's the way to make a lot of money. Otherwise, I think you can also make a lot of money if you get really respected in the fashion industry, if you get known and respected by customers. It is, of course, much slower. It is, I think then you have, for me, the success is also when you are when you are respected by the press. The press writes a lot on me, for instance, what I found they're very nice, and which gives me then a lot of visibility, where again I earn a lot of respect from my customers. I have to say, as simple as that, when I see one of my customers wearing my clothes, or sending me a photo saying, "Wow, I was at this event and I was so happy wearing your dress," this is for me personally the nicest compliment and the biggest success. Finance, to be frank, remains difficult. It remains difficult. Everybody has to see what his or her budget is, what are you aspiring to, and then you have to adapt your model, your business model, to that. So it is really a choice. As I say, if you want, and I really want to have fun and create as an artist what I want to create. And so that is for me much more important now than making most of the money out of it.
Indeed. I think myself, I couldn't agree more. Also, coming to coaching for the first time, for example, I left a sales job so I could coach, which was more exciting for me and I was much more passionate about. But soon after, I realized I'm not a coach only. I should also be a salesperson. And just like you, I would rather spend my hours, working with clients and consulting them. But sometimes, yes, you have to wear these different hats. And I think every entrepreneur has to make that decision for themselves. Where do I put my focus, right? Because we have limited energy, limited resources. So we got to be a bit more strategic about, and maybe also, as you said, right? Slow growth is also okay. You don't have to rapidly grow your business as long as you are happy, you're enjoying, and hopefully you are also financially sustainable.
It takes a number of years, Dursun, and you know that. And I think I'm also an impatient person, and I was hoping that after a year I would have the big name, but it's not the way. I have to calm myself too. But and then, as I said, I tried to contract with bigger firms, and then I felt, no, the work is changing. I don't want this kind of life. I think there are ways to get around it, and yes, it's slower. But for instance, I think in the fashion industry, what I see in my case, if you do slow fashion, which is also very important nowadays, you don't want to be in fast fashion necessarily as an artist. If you do slow fashion, if you want to do your creations in small quantities, I think that the idea I have more and more is to pair up with other designers. So there are so many out there who are small, who are solo entrepreneurs, who are moving slowly forward, who are progressing slowly. So if we put all our efforts together and we join and do lots of things together, I think we can really use those synergies and move together, which gives us a different impact.
And would you say there is a somewhat kind of trend on this direction? Because I think for a lot of our listeners, myself included, I think the word fashion brings kind of, it's like a coin with two sides, right? It is amazing, it's beautiful, right? It gives you a sense of identity sometimes, right? Like you can, the way you dress can influence the way you feel. But at the same time, then there is a high cost, especially with this fast fashion, right? The environmental cost and increase in consumerism. And so there is also kind of negative connotation to fashion. Do you see any shift in this where, as you said, more small independent designers collaborating more and more shift towards like slow fashion where we don't have to constantly be replacing our closet?
I see more and more independent designers coming up, especially in Luxembourg, where I think a year ago or two there was basically no one. I felt I'm the first one to do fashion design in Luxembourg, and now I feel there are many more people who start and who are all along the same concept and lines. They want to be artistic and create special things, but without doing the big quantity and the low cost and environmentally bad process. So I think at the level of small entrepreneurs, we are very well doing on that. At the level of customers, there are, of course, people understand it, but I think it is still a long, long process to get away from fast fashion to slow fashion. It's an obvious thing. It's cost. I mean, if you can buy much more often at a low cost, it's understandable. Not everybody wants or can spend so much money on clothes. So I think it is a very difficult change to impose on people. And we will have to see. I think that the fast fashion producers have to change as well. And I hope that in the slow fashion world, life gets easier, and that we are able to produce probably at lower cost as well, and that we are able to convince people.
I hope so too. I think, as I agree, as you said, it takes very long time to change people's mindset, behavior choices, because we, as human beings, I think we want an instant gratification. We don't want something along the lines, right? Like in next year or a year after. If today I can buy 10 items for 100 euros or something like that, like why would I want to buy one item for that price? So hopefully, as you said, the shift, I think, started maybe very slowly. I do see around my friend circle, people who I hang out with, like there is a bit of shift in terms of where they want to invest their money. People started thinking about, oh, how was it even produced? Who produced it? At what conditions? In what circumstances? So I hope I'm like you, positive and optimistic and hopeful. We are, Francine, reaching the end of the podcast. I have two more questions for you. One, if you had to, because we had such a diverse conversation talking about entrepreneurship and fashion, what do you want our listeners to take home? What is one message you want them to walk away from today's conversation?
I think that the main message would be believe in yourself and jump. If you have an idea, if you have a project, just don't miss it. Don't wait until the end of your life when it is too late. I'm thinking of that book that it's already quite old now, Night Train to Lisbon, from Pascal Mercier, where he describes this so well, actually, of this man who is old in his house, and he's the day before he dies, and he looks at this beautiful Steinway piano that is in his house, and then he realizes that he has never learned to play on it, and he realizes also that it was too late starting to learn it. So don't wait until it is too late. Believe in yourself, jump. But of course, you must have objectives, strategies, a good team, and also have a plan B. Put yourself into question all the time, and go a step back if necessary.
Couldn't agree more. So maybe I add, as you said, have a plan B. So jump, but have a life jacket just in case.
Exactly.
Yes. All right. I have one last question, which was left for you by my previous guest. This person didn't know who they were leaving this question to. So the question is, do you celebrate success? And if yes, how?
I'm not sure I celebrate success. As I said, I think you have to. There are so many definitions of what is success. And for me, success can be very little things that happen. A comment someone makes to me in my store when people look at my fashion. It can be something that is written to me in the press that I find really, really meaningful. So those are, for me, success is a combination of all these little things on a daily basis that motivate you. Do I celebrate it? No, I think it fuels me. All these little successes fuel me. But I like to share my happiness then with people. I like to celebrate in the way that I love making gifts and gratifying the people who help me with it.
I see. But would I be right to say that you at least, maybe you don't kind of consciously celebrate it, but you at least acknowledge when when that little success happens, and as I agree, everyone I think has their own definition of what success is. So whenever this little success happens, do you acknowledge it to yourself? Oh, this is it. I want more of this, kind of, at least, and feel proud in that particular moment that, oh, I designed this dress and now my customer is happy, they feel beautiful, and yeah. So you know what I mean? Like acknowledge that and feel proud in that particular moment.
Yes,
Do-
I do. And I think it is important to feel proud about what you achieve, proud about your successes, absolutely. And that's what keeps you going. It's not only feeling proud about it, it's also feeling grateful about it. I have to
Mhm.
say, I really, and you should never forget to be grateful for what, for the successes that you get.
And what would you say you are the most grateful for so far in your entrepreneurial journey?
I'm grateful for people respecting me in my new in my new career. I didn't expect it at all at the beginning. I wasn't sure whether I would be taken seriously, whether I would be able to really launch with success so that I can financially survive with my brand. And I must say I'm very, very grateful for the respect and the support I get from the people around me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Francine, for joining us today on the Inside Story podcast and sharing your inspirational entrepreneurial story. I am inspired after having listened to this conversation. I hope our audience too. Today, you have demonstrated what entrepreneurship really means, jumping and pursuing, taking the leap of faith and taking the risk in order to pursue those dreams that you have before it's too late. And as you've demonstrated, it's never too late to pursue your passion and create something that you are really passionate about. So thank you so much for doing that today.
Thank you, Dursun. It was a pleasure.